The role of the vice president in the United States is one of the strangest political offices in America, yet it's a position of great significance. Although it's never been definitively decided what the vice president should actually do, they are just a heartbeat away from the presidency. And historically, some vice presidents have stepped into the highest office under extraordinary circumstances. However, not all vice presidential picks have been successful or even wise. Over the years, some choices have sparked controversy, raised eyebrows, and, in hindsight, been deemed disastrous. Either J.D. Vance or Tim Walz will be the next holder of the office, and whilst both have had their stumbles in the campaign, neither looks like they'd make it onto our list from what we've seen so far. So, who are the worst vice presidential picks in history? One of the earliest and most infamous vice presidential selections was Aaron Burr, chosen by Thomas Jefferson in 1800. Burr's tenure as vice president was marred by scandal and intrigue. Initially, the election of 1800 ended in a tie between Jefferson and Burr, leading to a prolonged and bitter battle in the House of Representatives. Burr's refusal to step aside for Jefferson created deep mistrust between the two men. Once in office, Burr's ambitions led to a series of conflicts, culminating in his duel with Alexander Hamilton in 1804, which resulted in Hamilton's death. This act effectively ended Burr's political career and left a dark stain on his legacy. Burr's time as vice president is often remembered more for his personal vendettas and the infamous duel than for any positive contributions to the nation. Moving forward in history, another notable vice presidential pick gone wrong was Andrew Johnson, chosen by Abraham Lincoln for his second term in 1864. Johnson, a Southern Democrat, was selected as a gesture of national unity during the Civil War. However, after Lincoln's assassination, Johnson's presidency was disastrous. His lenient approach to Reconstruction and his frequent clashes with Congress, particularly the radical Republicans, led to his impeachment by the House of Representatives in 1868. Although Johnson narrowly avoided removal from office, his presidency is often regarded as one of the worst in American history. His failure to effectively lead the nation during a crucial period of rebuilding left deep divisions that affected the country for years. The 20th century also saw its share of questionable vice presidential picks. One of the most controversial was Spiro Agnew, selected by Richard Nixon in 1968. Agnew was chosen to appeal to the conservative wing of the Republican Party, and he initially gained attention for his outspoken criticism of anti-war protesters and the media. However, Agnew's political career unraveled in 1973 when he was implicated in a corruption scandal involving bribery, extortion, and tax evasion from his time as governor of Maryland. Facing criminal charges, Agnew resigned in disgrace, becoming the second vice president in U.S. history to resign. His departure further destabilized the Nixon administration, which was already reeling from the Watergate scandal. Agnew's fall from grace remains one of the most shocking and scandalous moments in the history of the vice presidency. Another vice presidential pick that is often criticized is Dan Quayle, selected by George H.W. Bush in 1988. Quayle, a relatively unknown senator from Indiana, was widely regarded as an inexperienced and unqualified choice for such a high office. Throughout his tenure as vice president, Quayle was frequently mocked for his public gaffes and perceived lack of intellectual depth. Perhaps the most infamous incident was his misspelling of the word potato during a 1992 school spelling bee, which became a symbol of his perceived incompetence. Although Quayle served out his term without any major scandals, his tenure is often remembered more for his verbal missteps and the ridicule he faced than for any significant accomplishments. In more recent history, Sarah Palin's selection as John McCain's running mate in 2008 is often cited as a significant misstep. Palin, the governor of Alaska, was relatively unknown on the national stage and was chosen as a game changer to energize the Republican base and appeal to women voters. However, her lack of experience and knowledge on national and international issues quickly became apparent. Palin's interviews, particularly with CBS's Katie Couric, exposed her limited grasp of critical topics, leading to widespread criticism and concern about her readiness to step into the presidency if needed. While Palin energized the conservative base, her selection ultimately alienated moderate voters, and is believed to have contributed to McCain's defeat in the 2008 election. Palin's candidacy highlighted the risks of selecting a running mate more for political strategy than for their qualifications and readiness to govern. While these vice presidential picks stand out for their controversies and shortcomings, they also serve as cautionary tales. The selection of a vice presidential candidate is one of the most important decisions a presidential nominee can make. It requires a careful balance of political strategy, experience, and the ability to assume the presidency if necessary. A poor choice can lead to scandal, weaken an administration, and even affect the outcome of an election. Aaron Burr's legacy is a stark reminder of how personal ambition and political rivalries can overshadow the responsibilities of high office. His infamous duel with Alexander Hamilton not only ended Hamilton's life but also symbolized the dangers of unchecked ambition in politics. Burr's failure to work harmoniously with President Jefferson and his subsequent fall from grace set a precedent for the importance of a strong and cooperative relationship between the president and vice president. Andrew Johnson's disastrous presidency underscores the importance of ideological alignment and political acumen in a vice presidential pick. Johnson's views on Reconstruction were diametrically opposed to those of the radical Republicans, leading to a power struggle that nearly resulted in his removal from office. His inability to lead effectively during a critical period in American history serves as a warning about the dangers of selecting a running mate based on short-term political calculations rather than long-term governance. Spiro Agnew's resignation amidst a corruption scandal highlights the risks of choosing a running mate with a questionable ethical background. Agnew's fall not only embarrassed the Nixon administration, but also contributed to the broader climate of scandal and mistrust that ultimately led to Nixon's resignation. Agnew's case is a stark reminder that a vice presidential candidate's integrity and ethical conduct are paramount considerations in the selection process. Dan Quayle's tenure illustrates the risks of selecting a vice president who is perceived as unprepared or lacking in intellectual rigor. While Quayle avoided major scandals, his frequent gaffes and perceived lack of competence became a liability for the Bush administration. Quayle's experience serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of choosing a running mate who is not only politically advantageous, but also capable of commanding respect and demonstrating competence on the national stage. Sarah Palin's candidacy in 2008 is perhaps the most recent and vivid example of a vice presidential pick that backfired. Her selection was initially seen as a bold and strategic move, but her lack of experience and knowledge quickly became apparent. Palin's candidacy alienated moderate voters and raised serious questions about her readiness to lead. Her selection serves as a powerful reminder that the choice of a running mate should be based on more than just electoral considerations. It should also reflect the candidate's qualifications and ability to govern effectively. These examples of poor vice presidential selections share common themes: personal ambition, political expediency, ethical lapses, and a lack of preparation or competence. Each of these factors has contributed to the downfall or weakening of a vice president, and by extension, the administration they served. In the end, the role of the vice president is too important to be treated as an afterthought or a mere political calculation. The position requires a careful and thoughtful selection process that prioritizes the ability to lead and govern effectively. As the 2024 election approaches, the lessons from these historical missteps should serve as a guide for future presidential nominees. The choice of a vice presidential running mate is a critical decision that can shape the course of an administration and, ultimately, the future of the nation. While the vice presidency has often been seen as a secondary role, the reality is that the vice president must be prepared to step into the presidency at a moment's notice. The stakes are high, and the consequences of a poor choice can be far-reaching and long-lasting. In the end, the worst vice presidential picks in history are a testament to the complexities and challenges of political leadership. They serve as a reminder that the selection of a vice president is not just a matter of political strategy. It is a reflection of a candidate's judgment, values, and commitment to the well-being of the nation. As history has shown, a poor vice presidential pick can have serious and lasting consequences, both for the individuals involved and for the country as a whole.